the biggest discovery for me this year was almost no school districts in the state have an operating budget, and no state agency that we could identify as a state has an operating budget. Just mind blowing. I mean, it's just one of those things that you just take for granted. And obviously I've taken it for granted for many years. And, finally, something lit up where, we started like turning over stones. It's like, wait a minute, is there a budget under there? And, going back and forth with these school districts, we found out, no. Most school districts, MPS, Milwaukee Public Schools, is the only school district I know of that has a bona fide operating budget. The rest just have income statements that they call budgets. They keep track of how much revenue they get from different sources and how much they spend. But when it comes to actually managing their money, having an operating budget where they're, allocating resources and setting priorities, almost none of them have it, which kind of explains why they accomplish so little yet spend so much money doing it. And then state agencies, that's the same thing. There were just like little indicators, little clues that we were picking up on where it's like these agencies aren't acting like organizations or behaving like organizations that are actually managing their money. So we did open records requests, so that there'd be no question. We said, hey, open records request, we want a copy of your operating budget. And I mean, a lot of them ignored us. The ones that did respond, some of them admitted they don't have operating budgets, and they sent us, just papers from the Legislative Fiscal Bureau that aren't budgets. They're just kind of like descriptions of what they do. Others sent us income statements, again, claiming these were their budgets, but no, they're just income statements. So, yeah, state government, most of these agencies completely fiscally irresponsible. And it's probably not something that surprises a lot of people on one hand, but it is shocking on the other hand that, we have organizations like this, huge organizations that, are accountable to the public that just completely irresponsible.
Well, and we are talking about government.
Yeah.
Isn't that synonymous with irresponsible?
Well, yeah, finally we're able to put a finger on it. It is. But we're finally able to put our finger on it. Because a lot of times, people know the government's, inefficient and all that, but it's really hard to actually articulate how it's inefficient. And you get, projects like, Doge, for example. And I follow him on Twitter, every other day you got Elon coming up with, examples here and there, one-offs of, hey, this is government waste, that's government waste. Okay, but, what's the source? What is actually driving this waste? You can't just cherry pick programs or, government projects and say this is waste. You need to get to the bottom of it. And I hope Doge is able to do that. But, as I'm kind of, trying to, explain to the audience, it takes a lot of experience. It takes a lot of years. You just take so much for granted. We got so many just normalcy biases that it takes a long time to get over that. So, Elon's got, technically, potentially 4 years, but everyone that's talking about what the Trump administration hopes to accomplish, they better get done within the first 18 months. So, not a very long time to figure this stuff out. So, but, there was something else that I wanted to talk about that was also another shocking discovery for me this year, and that's how our energy prices are set in this state. Now, MacIver knew this, but, and a lot of people know this, but, state, the energy company, the electric company, they don't get to charge you whatever they want to charge you. Those rates are set by the Public Service Commission, a state agency. What we didn't understand was the calculation that they do to determine those rates. And the assumption that I think a lot of people have is, well, you get paid for the power and, then they let you, make a little, you're authorized a little profit on top of that for the energy you produce. And it turns out that the power company's profits have absolutely nothing to do with how much energy they produce. Whether they're powering, 100 million homes or whether they're powering one home, that change in energy has absolutely nothing to do with their bottom line. They get to recoup that cost no matter what it is from their customers. So no incentive for them in terms of, producing cheap energy. what they get their profit on is capital investment. So if you build a new power plant, you get to make a profit off of what that power plant cost you, which is a horrible system. What this is doing is it's incentivizing construction. And it's also incentivizing you to shut down old power plants because you aren't making any money off of them. So it doesn't matter if you've got the most efficient power plants in the world, shut it down. You aren't making any money off of that. Oh, solar power, that's really expensive. It's really expensive to set up a solar farm. Awesome. That's where we are going to make our money. That's why there's such this, why the power companies are so behind green energy is because they know that it's really expensive and that's how they make a profit. So just a horrifying discovery, and energy is going to feed into one of my concerns for the next year as well. But I mean, that was just something that I wish everybody in the state understood that the power company has no incentive to provide you cheap, efficient energy. It's the more expensive it is for the facilities, the better for them.
Bill, it's tough not to be cynical, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so looking ahead to the next year, we've got some, concerns, but, there's themes. I mean, I don't need a crystal ball to see this stuff. I mean, first of all, we know the state budget, that's going to be a huge issue in the year ahead. And, this is my eighth budget I've covered. Every budget is pretty, there's certain consistencies with how we do the state budget. It's kind of designed to maintain the status quo and to control the growth of government, not stop the growth of government, just keep it under control. So, the legislature and the governor are going to, they're going to butt heads continually over this process, but at the end of the day, they don't really want too much change, and they want government. They want a little bit more money for government. So that's kind of like my cynical, take on this. Now we've got strong recommendations on how we can start changing that, and there's good reason to as well. Before I get into that, though, I need to go back, touch on this energy thing, because that's going to be a continued theme throughout this next year as well. One of the big victories for taxpayers or ratepayers this year that a lot of people probably don't know about, but those high tension power lines, there's an effort to kind of create a monopoly when it comes to power transmission in the state. Now those efforts were defeated this past session, but apparently the incentive to monopolize has not gone away. And as we know in the free market, when you have a monopoly, especially when the government creates a monopoly, you're going to end up with higher prices. So that's something that we're watching at MacIver. The other problem is Wisconsin is actually there's experts out there that are predicting that Wisconsin will be facing is at high risk for blackouts starting next year. And the reason for this is because we keep shutting down our old power plants because there's no money in it. And on one hand, and then on the other hand, we're bringing in these really energy intensive industries. Racine County has that Microsoft is setting up this enormous multi-billion-dollar server farm there. That is going to just drain the grid. And it's not just going to affect Milwaukee, it's going to affect the whole state. And then we've got another multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company, Lilly, that makes those diet pills.
Can't they put in their own grid to support themselves? I mean, right?
Well, I theoretically, but no business is going to do that if they could get if they could just suck off of the infrastructure already in a state. That's why you come to a new state is because you've got this infrastructure in place. We're going to take it all up. So in Texas, so Microsoft is going to take more energy than we have in a surplus right now. That means it's going to be pitted against other customers. So that's going to start creating a blackout. Now this is going to create kind of a barrel roll in that this is going to disincentivize other companies from coming to Wisconsin. If you are looking to set up a new factory or a warehouse, one of the very first things you do is you go to the power company and say, hey, can you support this facility if I build it in this area? And I mean, either we Energy is going to say, no, we honestly can't, or they're going to lie and get sued about it later on. So suddenly, companies are going to have a disincentive to come to Wisconsin. So, all these great job numbers that Governor Evers loves to throw out there, hey, those days, enjoy it while you got it, because those days are coming to a close very quickly unless you want to work for Microsoft. Then in terms of, going into the next issue here is the Supreme Court race. Now, this is going to be another really big issue for, the spring election. Is the Supreme Court going to be liberal or is it going to be conservative? And right now it's liberal. And we've just learned that the court is essentially rogue. They don't care what the law says. They don't care what the words are on that piece of paper, no matter, black and white, no matter how clear and concise the phrasing is. They're going to make that law say whatever the liberal cause of the day wants it to say. That creates a environment of uncertainty, and no business wants to be around in an environment of uncertainty. That's why companies don't set up shop in the third world. So, Wisconsin's going to start, there's going to be not only are we going to lose the incentive for companies to come here because there's no energy, we're going to also incentivize companies to start looking elsewhere because they want a predictable regulatory and legal climate, and Wisconsin just isn't going to have that to offer, especially if the liberals maintain control of the Supreme Court. That goes into another issue, Act 10. It's already, the liberals have already sued over this in Madison. Everyone knows this issue is going to end up in front of the Supreme Court. And if it's a liberal Supreme Court, they aren't going to care what the argument is. They're going to throw it out. Act 10, has saved Wisconsin taxpayers $32 billion over the past 16 years. When you consider, the trajectory of costs versus what we're actually paying. Now, what that's going to do is it's not going to lead to immediate tax increases. We still have levy limits in place and revenue caps for school districts. But what it's going to do is start pushing out service. Now, before Act 10, every local government in the states and the state government were under incredible pressure to find cost savings in order to meet the requirements of their union contracts. The union bosses ran the show. They pretty much told these local governments and the state how it's going to be, and the local governments and the state had to come up with the money. So if Act 10 were to go away and the union bosses came back, you're going to have a situation where all these communities are going to be decreasing the level of service in order to pay the unions. And eventually, that pressure is going to result in more referendums, more pressure on the state to increase taxes so that service levels can be restored. And so that's going to be the chain reaction that's going to lead to higher property taxes and, fiscal crisis after fiscal crisis at every level of government in the state. So, that's another point of concern. We got the spring election, but then the fall election's coming up. Or not, I'm sorry, not this year, but because we run election, political campaigns run for multiple years now. Look, Governor Evers is going to run for re-election. We've already seen the indications.
Do you think that he is, or do you think that Josh Call is going to run?
Well, here's where it comes. You're seeing a bit of tension between those two. A few weeks ago, Josh Call was. Yeah. Josh Call, was waging his unrestricted political lawfare on conservatives in this state. And Evers actually had some disparaging comments about that, in the media a couple of weeks ago. So we see strong signs that Evers is going to run. We see strong signs that Call's going to run. People are throwing around, Cavalier Johnson's name, the mayor of Milwaukee. So Evers it seems pretty clear that Evers wants to run for a third term, but you're also getting other Democrats that are losing their patience and getting anxious for their turn as well. If there's a Democrat primary, and that would be really bad especially if Evers won that primary, he would definitely come out of that with less money, and he'd come out, hobbled from that. So he's going to be trying to do everything he can to prevent a Democrat primary this year. That means he's going to be presenting probably the most liberal, insane, progressive budget proposal we've ever seen from him. He's going to be doing everything he can to defy the Trump administration. and he's going to be doing everything he can to undermine potential challengers like Hall. So, I was just describing this at a staff meeting this morning. He's going to be like the Tasmanian devil, just destroying everything he can, and everything he can that he could potentially pin the blame on Republicans for. So, yeah. Yeah. So, but you know what? Maybe I should really be pushing this imagery because we don't need to have people, especially like you, Meg, letting your guard down and underestimate what he's capable of doing. The metaphorically, yes. But so, and we know that Evers has a proclivity towards taking credit for good things the Republicans do and blaming Republicans for bad things that he does. He's trying to take credit for all these, the tax cuts in the last budget. Well, he tried to raise taxes. So, he's a lot more politically astute than he gives the appearance of. Now, I mentioned the state budget, how, he's going to propose a very progressive state budget. State budget is something that MacIver spends a lot of time, really analyzing, picking apart. And so that's going to be a really important thing, effort that we're doing over this next year. The budget debate is going to start off essentially in early February when the governor gives his budget proposal addressed to the legislature. But the legislature, they've had the same approach all through Governor Evers' time in office, and they kind of took this approach with Governor Walker a little bit too, and that was just essentially toss out the governor's budget and start with where spending is right now, and then add to it. It's called incremental budgeting. It's safe. It maintains the status quo, and it ensures that state government spending will always increase a little bit. We're starting to apply pressure this year, and it's going to play out throughout next year too. That no, it's time to change this. There is strong, the voters are, they elected Republicans, especially Trump, but also here in Wisconsin, the legislature, because they want change. They don't want the status quo. They want reforms. They expect efficiency out of their governments. So at MacIver, we're pushing what's called performance-based budgeting. This is not a foreign concept to the legislature, just they don't do it. It's where you determine funding levels to agencies based off of their performance. And they've been collecting all this data every 2 years. When the agencies put in their budget requests, they include the performance data. So the tools are all out there. The legislature needs to start using those tools. Another thing that they always do that just leads to bigger and bigger budgets is we always do an omnibus budget in Wisconsin. I think we're one of like 17 states that does it like that. Other states have they'll have several appropriations bills. Some agencies will get their own, but and so others will be grouped together. But by doing it, you're able to be a lot more discerning in how you're allocating funds to those agencies and within those agencies. That's another move that the legislature needs to move towards in this budget. And then finally, Meg, look, our funding formulas in the state, we've been doing them for 20, 30 years. They don't work. They don't make, they were designed to please everybody, and instead everybody hates them. I'm talking about the school funding formula. Look, everybody knows that thing doesn't work. All it does is pit school districts off of each other. They're able to shift blames for their failures. It was designed to save people from to save property taxpayers. But as we've learned from these referendums, people want higher property taxes if it means schools are going to get more funding. And I know not everybody, but the vast majority of Wisconsinites, you're talking 55% of Wisconsinites want higher property taxes if it's going to mean more funding for their schools. So, you've lost that incentive. Think about all the money school districts waste on marketing and advertising, trying to poach students from other school districts to, boost their own funding. This system isn't working. Then we also have the shared revenue program where the state local governments can't, levy, essentially tax however much they want because the state gives them, shares, the general fund with them to make up for their lack of taxing authority. Again, that's not working either. we have all the, communities are pit against one another, blaming each other when they don't get enough money, blaming the state for, not giving them enough money. The shared, we had the grand compromise this past last year, and the current budget was we would give 20% of the sales tax revenue. We would distribute that among the communities. Hey, that doesn't work either, because you're essentially taking, all this, you're taking all the sales tax revenue from around the state, you're throwing it in a big pot, and then you're redistributing it as state government sees fit. This disincentivizes local economic growth. Just, again, another program that nobody is happy with. And I think this is really the time for state government to take a hard look at these programs, take a hard look at how it does its budget, and start making some changes. This is not the year for a status quo budget. The voters have given a mandate to their leaders that we want reform, we want efficiency. And after all these years, I think, this is the time for it to happen. So I guess in a nutshell, Meg, that's, what I learned this past year, what I'm afraid of for the next year, and what I would like to see happen for next year. And I think a lot of people would also like to see that stuff happen.
Well, I'm just going to say, Bill, I have decided prior to the new year that for health reasons, I just want to be even more healthy than I strive to be. I'm not drinking anymore. After talking with you today, I think I'm going to start drinking. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, there's
New Year is still New Year's is still a couple days away. So I mean, you could.
No. I mean, this has been going on for several weeks. So no, I'm sticking with it. I feel good about. I actually feel better. I mean, it's not like I'm I mean, one or two drinks. Honestly, I think maybe I saw. This is totally off topic, but I saw. Sometimes waste time on social media, and I saw a video of someone sort of demonstrating how long it takes for alcohol to get out of your system after just consuming one drink, and it just it was, I don't know, it kind of was shocking to me, and I thought, wow, I just want to have as healthy as a healthy body as possible. And so no, you haven't driven me to drink. I'm just being facetious, but so
have a couple more pints of water on me.
Yes, I most certainly will. I do like my sparkling water, so that will be what that's my goal going forward. But well, Bill, it was great to chat with you. I'm hoping that we can be optimistic about the new year, but I mean, I guess caution, because as you said, although the visual just doesn't, I'm trying to envision Tony Evers' face on the Tasmanian devil's body, and it's still a stretch for me, but maybe it's a slow-moving Tasmanian devil, still devilish.
Do not underestimate your adversaries, and the first step to solving, reform is identifying threats and problems. So hopefully we got started doing that before we get to the next year.
Yes.
This morning. So.
No time to grow complacent. That's for sure. Easy for me to say.
That's right. It's gonna be a crazy year. It's not behind. You don't get to just hang it up because the presidential election's over.
Right.
Get ready for 2023 or 2025.
Yes. The left never rests. So I mean, there's no rest for the weary or the wicked, so to speak. The Tasmanian devil we're talking about there. But well. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, I appreciate all the important work that MacIver Institute does, and I look forward to talking with you in the new year.
You too, Meg. Thank you very much. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Take care.